Are you tired of facing goblins at the beginning of every campaign you've ever played in your life? I mean, really, we all start the game, you go around the corner and there's a clan of goblins just there, causing mischief as they always do in every scenario. Always. So, we're going to give you a whole bunch of options to replace goblins with things that might make more sense, or at least more interesting if you've already run plenty of games that start with goblin encounters.
So the first one that's going to be on the list is Myconids. They're really cool and they can be really fun to roleplay. They spend a third of their day just tripping balls. So honestly, there's a lot of ways you can take that. But in reality, though, they're a really kind and gentle nature kind of creature until they get infected by the purple mushroom. Usually when they are infected with a purple fungus disease, that's when they become hostile and a real threat to the party. If you think about it, it's just a normal mushroom until it isn't. You can just stumble upon it, it can be eating your toes and you never even know. But that's just when it's hostile, and that's not the most typical way that you would find a Myconid. It's friendly, and if it was gonna talk to you, it wouldn't do it verbally, it would actually do it telepathically. So if a Myconid was actually talking to you, you've already inhaled its spores. And if it was evil, that's probably something that's not very good. But like I said, they can be super fun to roleplay, and if you really, really wanted to, you could have a whole society of mushrooms just on one rock.
One more good alternative is flying monkeys. They can be a serious pain, or maybe just a nuisance. So one thing about the flying monkeys is the fact that they fly, meaning that you can give your ranger, who's been missing every shot since the game started, a real leg up, especially against your other melee fighters or barbarians, things like that, who have been maybe running the show so far. This would be a good encounter to consider for something like that. Another thing that's interesting with those is that flying monkeys are typically servants of something else, opening up a huge opportunity for a plot hook to maybe introduce your BBEG, or the first real intimidating fight or intimidating character for the party. Technically in D&D lore, the flying monkeys don't necessarily talk, but it'd be pretty easy to homebrew a situation where they can talk as well as flying. I mean, what's really more impressive anyway? Or at the very least, if you want to almost avoid a combat encounter, you could just make them a little nuisance where they just fly out of nowhere and steal a player's hat or something. Monkeys, grumpy fingers, they always steal tourists' cameras at zoos and things like that. Be a similar situation.
The next tiny creature on the list is going to be Mephits. And this is actually a wide range of creatures, believe it or not. So it's almost like we're cheating, but they get the spot. Really what they are tiny elementals, and it could be pretty much any element that you're thinking of: mud, ice, snow, smoke, whatever you could think of. There's like 7 or 8 of them in the player's handbook alone. They can be really detrimental in combat, or just a really good way to show that your players have abilities that make them shine or exemplify what they are. Let's just say you have a fire genasi and you throw a bunch of fire Mephits at him. He's gonna have a blast. Doesn't matter what the class, he's gonna kill him. And if you were gonna try to roleplay them, it's a little bit like an imp, just a little bit less intelligent. They're out for mischief, but not to steal your boots. They're gonna put lava in your boots. And another thing about the Mephits is they could actually be a decent tool for world building. So let's just say it's like a fight on site scenario with your ice and dust Mephits. They actually end up fighting as much as they can, and that's what births mud Mephits in your world. Or let's just say your party walks up to an encounter and there's 15, 20 Mephits, and they're starting to think to themselves, is he trying to kill us? But really, they start fighting each other and they gotta get out of there. Either way, these things could be great at your table, and they could really play into your player's strengths or weaknesses, depending on what you're looking for.
Another good creature for replacing goblins, especially if you're in an area that might be hot or volcanic in your setting for some reason, is fire newts. These bad boys can inhale and ingest lava and spit it back out like a dragon's breath weapon, which is pretty awesome. But be careful.
Right.
They can be run as a tribal type of clan, or maybe even like more military soldier-esque, depending on maybe if they're working for or from the Plains of Fire where they originate, things like that. You can easily find multiple classes with Fire Newts too. They could have casters or martial classes, which could fit really well paired against your player's strengths and weaknesses, which is always something good to consider as a DM and the monsters you're throwing towards your players.
Oh, definitely.
And it'd be pretty easy to roleplay them, a lot like grungs, especially in the sense that they're amphibious, but definitely differently. They could be like amphibious, and instead of hanging out in ponds, they're hanging out in pools of lava, and things like that. So back to them being more specific for the type of area. If you're in a spot where, like I said, you're in the Plains of Fire, or you're in some area of like the Nine Hells or something where everything's on fire all the time, you might not find things like goblins there, and these would be the go-to replacement for a goblin for sure. Definitely played to the world building of your campaign at that point. And lastly, if your wizard is all about fireball, it's not going to work out for him this time.
Yep, somebody's immune. And then last but not least, we're going to be talking about grungs. And they're basically water goblins. And they've added a hierarchy tier through color, and each of those tiers have a poison attached to them. What more could you ask for? And it's not even like the lore or anything that makes these guys interesting, but just the way that you can run any of them or any of their colors would be awesome. So let me just go through a couple of like the different colors and poisons that are associated with those. Like if you're a blue grung and you poison a player character, that player character has to make a loud noise at the beginning and end of their turn. Above table. You know how crazy that would be? You know, going around the table and you just have to remember, hey Cody, where's that,
Of course. This is going to be terrible for your rogue. The rogues are not going to be happy with this. Might use their cunning action to, take their stealth check at the end of their turn, and then right as soon as they're about to pop out of the bushes and shoot, they just and then it just doesn't work out for them.
Right.
There are plenty of other poisons too, though. The gold one, for example. Let's see what this one does. So, the gold grungs have the ability to poison you and charm the creature in a way that they actually learn the grung language and can't talk otherwise. And that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's really cool because the gold are actually the chieftains. So it's almost like they're spreading their culture more or less.
Right, exactly.
The red frog is actually really, really cool. And if you were going to get poisoned by a red frog, you have to take your next action to eat anything that's closest to you. That could be hilarious and kind of screw over somebody if they only had one action for combat.
Yeah, for sure. And to just take your time. You can pair this in a way. Maybe you find a red grung hanging out in some, the back of a kitchen or something like that. And this encounter's going to get wild because you're opening up all the cupboards trying to find something to eat while you're trying to fight. It could get real silly real quick.
Could you just imagine the plot hook of there's a bunch of little red frogs that won't leave the Cook's Guild alone?
Yes, exactly. And if you get poisoned by a purple grung, you're going to be forced to seek some sort of liquid with the absolute compulsion to immerse yourself in it. So, if there's a puddle nearby, instead of rushing towards that grung as you being a barbarian and raging, you're instead going to rush towards that puddle and just take a little bath.
If you were gonna get poisoned by an orange frog, this is actually kind of, useful for combat. You're frightened, but not of the frog, of your allies. You know how crazy that could be for roleplay alone?
Yeah, very fun. This is definitely, we're seeing a trend here where a lot of these can really open up your players to become top-notch role players because, it's just easy setups for them.
Exactly.
And of course you've got the most common grung, which are the green ones. And if you get poisoned by these, not only is it going to terribly hinder your movement, but you're going to have to move only in hopping. And we're talking one hop per turn, one hop this time.
One hop this time. You could also move by climbing, but how easy would that really be? Especially if you were nowhere near a wall.
Right, you're in a very flat, marshy swamp area where you're encountering these grungs. Not going to be much climbing to be done.
Exactly. And the green grung is super cool because it basically neutralizes your party into moving like frogs. And if nobody has an awesome jump feat, then they're not really going to be able to go much farther because I'm pretty sure jump expends at least one action.
Yeah, for the most part. So it's going to be rough. It's going to be rough on your players, especially, okay, so you get, stopped by a tribe, maybe a wandering tribe of grungs. You've got multiple of these colored grungs stacking up their strange poison effects on you. It's just going to be goofy. It's going to be absolute chaos.
Oh, absolutely. And if you really wanted to make this deadly, just think about your environment, because grungs are kind of going to be in an aquatic, watery area anyway. So if somebody was dragged underwater, and non-aquatic people, of course, but if somebody was dragged underwater and held and grappled underwater, that's deadly. It's disadvantage on the skill check to get out, and you can't breathe underwater, you're gonna die.
Actually really dangerous. So you might even want to keep that in mind and be careful, because if it is replacing a goblin encounter, you don't want to let it end up being too dangerous.
Right, these are starter encounters, mind you.
Mm-hmm. One more thing, we did want to give a shout out to the Basic Liches. They posted a video that's kind of a similar topic if you're not done thinking about alternative encounters to goblins. You can find that right over here.
But other than that, everybody, thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, or subscribe, and we'll see you later.
Okay.
So how many goblins have you killed?
At least 1 million.
What level are you? 3.
Yeah. Literally.